Imagine waking up to breaking news, where a single bold move by one nation completely flips the script on an impending economic war. Today, we dive into the stunning diplomatic gambit that left the United States reeling and a powerful Mexican leader at the center of it all. In a scenario that felt ripped straight from a political thriller, Mexico's high-stakes maneuver not only delayed harsh U.S. tariffs, but ignited a firestorm of national pride and global intrigue. Welcome to our deep dive into the unexpected twist of events that reshaped international trade talks and rattled the political establishment. Our story begins on a tense morning in Washington, when U.S. President Donald Trump was preparing to announce a series of tariffs aimed at protecting American industries. Little did he know, right on the other side of the border, Mexico was already gearing up for a counterstrike. This isn't just another tariff to leads a riveting saga of negotiation, national pride, and the power of measured diplomacy. For months, the looming specter of high tariffs has cast a shadow over U.S.-Mexico trade relations. With plans to impose steep taxes on a broad range of products from automotive parts and electronics to agricultural goods and textiles, the Trump administration aimed to shield domestic industries from foreign competition. However, the stakes were incredibly high for Mexico. With more than 80% of its exports destined for American markets, any significant tariff hike risks sending shockwaves through its economy. The specter of a deep economic recession was a constant concern, and Mexican industries braced for impact. Trump's tariff strategy was not solely about economics. It was intertwined with domestic political pressures, especially concerning the hot-button issues of immigration and border security. The tariffs were as much a political statement as they were an economic tool, intended to appease a voter base demanding tough measures against illegal immigration. But behind the rhetoric lay a precarious balancing act that could have destabilized an entire economic ecosystem. In the midst of this brewing storm, a new leader emerged on the Mexican political scene, Claudia Sheinbaum. Known for her sharp intellect, calm demeanor, and unwavering commitment to national sovereignty, Sheinbaum quickly became the symbol of Mexico's defiant response. Her rise wasn't merely the result of political necessity, it was a reflection of the nation's deep-seated desire to stand tall in the face of external threat. At a pivotal rally in Mexico City, held in the bustling Zocalo Square, Sheinbaum addressed a sea of fervent supporters. With the energy of the crowd fueling her words, she declared that Mexico would not stand idly by while its economy was put on the line. "We will never allow our nation to be bullied by economic threats," she proclaimed, her voice resonating with resolve. Her measured yet powerful rhetoric served as a rallying cry, transforming fear into a unified call for dignity and resistance. While the public narrative was filled with stirring speeches and impassioned chants, a quieter, more intricate battle was unfolding behind closed doors. The Trump administration had meticulously prepared its tariff measures, planning to impose a 25% duty on key Mexican exports. The list was extensive, ranging from agricultural staples like avocados and tomatoes to essential components in the automotive and electronics industries. However, as negotiations progressed, Mexico's countermeasures began to take shape. Sheinbaum's approach was calculated and strategic. Rather than immediately retaliate with equally punitive measures, she opted for a measured response. In private briefings with her team, she outlined a plan that prioritized diplomatic engagement over immediate economic warfare. "This is not the time for rash decisions," she advised, emphasizing the need to exhaust all channels of dialogue before taking further action. Her approach was a stark contrast to the more aggressive posturing often seen in such high-tension negotiations. The impact of Sheinbaum's measured diplomacy was palpable. Across Mexico, there was an outpouring of national pride and relief as citizens celebrated the postponement of the tariffs. The streets were filled with jubilation, and media headlines heralded her as a national hero. At the same time, the delay in the tariff decision left the U.S. political landscape fraught with uncertainty. In a series of televised interviews, Sheinbaum stressed that while diplomatic dialogue had secured a temporary reprieve, Mexico's resolve remained unyielding. "Our sovereignty comes first," she stated, reminding her audience that any further attempts at economic coercion would be met with a robust and timely response. Her message was clear. While today's victory was a testament to the power of diplomacy, the door was always open for a retaliatory move if U.S. actions escalated. The delay of the tariffs had far-reaching consequences, both domestically and internationally. For Mexico, it was a lifeline. The country's economy, deeply intertwined with the U.S. market, would have suffered immensely under the weight of steep tariffs. Industries that relied on exports, especially automotive, agricultural, and manufacturing sectors breathed a collective sigh of relief as the immediate threat receded. On the U.S. side, however, the scenario was more complex. American consumers and businesses had to contend with the reality that a tariff war was not just about political posturing. It could lead to higher prices, disrupted supply chains, and economic uncertainty. Lobbyists from various sectors, including agriculture and manufacturing, began to voice their concerns. They argued that while the tariffs were designed to protect domestic interests, they could inadvertently hurt American consumers by triggering a domino effect of price hikes and reduced market stability. At the heart of this crisis was a series of backroom negotiations that involved not only the heads of state, but also corporate leaders, congressional figures, and trade experts. Behind the scenes, pressure mounted on both sides to find a solution that could stave off an all-out trade war. In Washington, aides and advisors scrambled to understand the implications of Mexico's counter-threat, while in Mexico City, Sheinbaum's team worked tirelessly to project an image of both strength and reason. One of the key elements in these negotiations was the realization that a full-blown tariff war would be a lose-lose scenario. For the United States, the imposition of tariffs on Mexican goods could backfire, hurting domestic industries and sparking retaliatory measures from not only Mexico but potentially other trade partners. For Mexico, any sudden economic shock would jeopardize the well-being of millions of its citizens who depended on the export-driven economy. In a rare moment of clarity, both sides acknowledged that dialogue was the best if not the only way forward. A turning point came with a direct phone call between President Trump and Claudia Sheinbaum. In this tense conversation, Trump reiterated his administration's commitment to imposing the planned tariffs. Yet, by the end of the call, there was a surprising shift in tone. In an unexpected concession, Trump announced that the imposition of tariffs would be delayed at least temporarily. The delay was positioned as a gesture of respect, a pause that allowed both sides to reassess their positions. For many in the U.S. political arena, this delay was met with mixed reactions. Some saw it as a necessary step to prevent economic chaos, while others interpreted it as a sign of weakness, a momentary retreat in the face of mounting pressure from an increasingly emboldened Mexico. The news quickly spread through cable news channels and social media, with pundits debating the long-term implications of the decision. Was it a strategic pause or a dangerous gamble that might embolden Mexico to push for even more concessions? The delay in tariff implementation had immediate reverberations within the United States. Among Trump's staunchest supporters, there was palpable frustration. Many viewed the postponement as a betrayal of the administration's promises to take a tough stance on trade and border security. In an environment already charged by the upcoming elections, the political fallout was significant. Critics argued that the decision undermined the president's credibility and might hurt his standing with voters who expected decisive action against perceived economic adversaries. At the same time, economists and trade experts pointed out that the delay offered a temporary reprieve from what could have been a devastating economic disruption. They emphasized that while the short-term effects were largely positive, keeping supply chains intact and preventing a sudden spike in consumer price, uncertainty about future tariff policies remained a critical concern for investors and businesses on both sides of the border. For Mexico, the postponement was more than just a win, it was a statement of intent. Under Sheinbaum's leadership, the nation had demonstrated that it was not merely a passive recipient of U.S. economic policies, but a formidable actor capable of leveraging its own economic and diplomatic assets. With more than 75% of its exports reliant on the U.S. market, Mexico had little room for error. Every decision was weighed against the potential economic fallout, and the government's cautious yet resolute stance was aimed at protecting both its industries and its people. Sheinbaum was quick to remind the nation that this was not the end of the battle. "Today, we celebrate a victory of dialogue and determination," she said in one of her addresses, "but the door remains open. Should the threat of tariffs reemerge, rest assured, we are ready to respond with equal measure." This message resonated deeply with a populace that had grown increasingly wary of being used as a bargaining chip in international trade disputes. The events of these past weeks have ignited a broader discussion about the future of international trade in an era marked by protectionism and unilateral policies. Trade agreements like NAFTA, now updated as the USMCA, were designed to promote mutual economic benefit and foster cooperation among neighboring countries. However, the tariff threat exposed underlying tensions that had long been simmering beneath the surface. In Washington, experts warned that a prolonged trade war could have catastrophic effects on the global economy. Disruptions in supply chains, particularly in critical sectors like automotive manufacturing and agriculture, could lead to far-reaching consequences not just for the U.S. and Mexico, but for allied nations as well. Meanwhile, the Mexican government's proactive stance opened up new possibilities for diversifying its trading partnerships. Should the U.S. push forward with tariffs in the future, Mexico has already signaled that it will explore alternative alliances and forge new trade relationships beyond its traditional markets. Behind the scenes, an influential cast of lobbyists and industry leaders played a critical role in shaping the negotiations. In the U.S., representatives from the automotive, agricultural, and manufacturing sectors were among the first to express concerns about the potential fallout from Trump's tariff proposals. These lobbyists argued that imposing harsh tariffs would not only damage bilateral trade, but also lead to an increase in prices for American consumers. Across the border, Mexican business leaders and agricultural experts worked tirelessly to articulate the risks of an economic shutdown triggered by retaliatory tariffs. They emphasized that any abrupt disruption in trade could jeopardize jobs, hinder economic growth, and ultimately harm the very people these policies were meant to protect. In a series of high-level meetings, both sides eventually began to understand that compromise and, above all, measured diplomacy was the only viable path forward. Despite the temporary relief, the specter of future tariff rounds still looms large. Analysts caution that while the current pause in tariffs might stave off immediate economic damage, it does not resolve the underlying tensions that gave rise to the crisis in the first place. In one particularly pointed remark during a recent press conference, Sheinbaum warned, "We have shown that diplomacy works, but should the need arise, our list of retaliatory measures is ready. We will not be pushed around." Such statements have only served to further galvanize public opinion in Mexico, where the sense of national unity and pride has reached unprecedented levels. For the U.S., the ongoing uncertainty is a reminder that economic policies, no matter how well-intentioned, carry risks that extend far beyond the negotiation table. Amidst the high-level talks and diplomatic maneuvering, everyday citizens have also been profoundly affected by the unfolding drama. In border towns and major urban centers alike, the possibility of tariffs has been a topic of constant conversation. Farmers in Texas and California, for instance, have expressed concerns about the potential impact on their livelihoods, fearing that Mexican retaliation could render their crops unsellable. Meanwhile, in Mexico, the atmosphere is one of cautious optimism. Local business owners report that the temporary tariff delay has allowed them to continue planning for the busy export season without the cloud of uncertainty hanging overhead. Public opinion, as reflected in numerous polls, has shown overwhelming support for Sheinbaum's measured approach. To many, she embodies a new era of leadership tone that prioritizes dialogue and respect over confrontation and unilateral action. As the dust begins to settle on this dramatic chapter of U.S.-Mexico relations, one thing is clear. The approach taken by Claudia Sheinbaum has left an indelible mark on both national and international perceptions of leadership. Her blend of firmness and diplomacy, combined with a genuine commitment to protecting her nation's interests, has not only delayed a potentially catastrophic economic conflict, but has also elevated her status as one of the most influential figures in contemporary Mexican politics. Critics have argued that her style borders on populism, yet her supporters see it as a necessary antidote to the often ruthless tactics employed in international trade disputes. In an era when many leaders opt for aggressive posturing, Sheinbaum's insistence on measured, thoughtful responses has resonated with millions. Whether this moment will serve as a springboard for future political ambitions, possibly even a run for the presidency, remains to be seen, but it is undeniable that her actions have redefined the parameters of modern diplomacy. As we wrap up our exploration of this extraordinary diplomatic episode, the key takeaway is clear. In international politics, the art of negotiation can sometimes be the most powerful weapon of all. The temporary reprieve from Trump's tariff plans, achieved through calm and calculated dialogue, underscores the fact that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges, a strategic and measured response can pave the way for a more stable future. The unfolding events continue to remind us that global economics and domestic politics are deeply intertwined. While today's victory for Mexico has been widely celebrated, it also serves as a stark warning to any nation that attempts to use economic might as a blunt instrument of policy. The road ahead is fraught with uncertainties. Whether more tariff rounds will be proposed, or if new diplomatic channels will open up, remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: the courage to stand up for national interests with dignity and resolve will always resonate with people. In the end, the story of Mexico's bold move is more than just a tale of tariffs and trade. It is a narrative about the power of leadership, the importance of dialogue, and the enduring spirit of a nation that refuses to be cornered. As the political winds shift and new challenges emerge on the horizon, we are reminded that every crisis is also an opportunity, a chance to redefine relationships, rethink strategies, and ultimately forge a future based on mutual respect and shared prosperity. Thank you for joining us as we unpack this dramatic chapter in global trade relations. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think lies ahead in the evolving US-Mexico trade dynamic? And if you found this story as compelling as we did, hit that like button and subscribe for more in-depth analyses of the world's most fascinating political and economic battles. Stay tuned, because in world politics, surprises are never far away, and the next twist could be just around the corner.